Hello, John Gooden here, UFC commentator. So this weekend we saw a fantastic main event in Vegas between Jack Hermansson and Marvin Vettori. Two Europeans. How did we get here? I was thinking about this because I typically get the assignments over in Europe, and this would have been a headliner over here in this region. But it happened in Vegas. There is the year 2020 for you. But it was also had me thinking about how the heck did we get here in terms of these two being paired up, because I really didn't see it. There's a bit of a log jam at the top of the division in middleweight, and Hermansson typically has a blueprint, a route to how and where he's going to go in order to get to the title. And the numerous times that I've spoken to him this year, not once did he mention Marvin Vettori. That's probably because Vittori is was down at 13, I believe, and Hermansson was sitting at a lofty number 4. Now, both fighters have endured a pretty crazy year in terms of the amount of different fighters they've been paired with. We'll go with the Joker first of all. I think first up he was supposed to be fighting the former champ Chris Weidman. Good fight for him. Great name value, of course. That fell through, and then he ended up fighting Kelvin Gastelum in Fight Island. That was a co-main event. I was on the call for that. First round submission. Great. And I think that Jack liked that as well, because Kelvin had come off of that wonderful fight with Israel Adesanya. Okay, things didn't work out for him against Darren Till, but now we're starting to see some common names and future opponents in and around that top 5, which I think would have been valuable for someone like Hermansson, the position that he was in. Anyway, coming away with the first round submission win over Kelvin Gastelum is magnificent. That's great on your resume. After that, he gets the fight that he's been looking for a long time with Darren Till. Till had come off the back of not winning against the more recent former champion in Robert Whittaker. Oh, there's a lot here, right? So then he was in a really interesting position. Apparently he had a great camp and he wanted to fight. So on the 11th hour, well, let's not go that far. Let's say on the 9th hour, he got Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland is trending right now. I think he's on a 4-fight win streak in 2020. He's a tricky guy. Beat Joaquin Buckley, the guy who's got the highlight of the decade. So a lot of value again for Hermansson, and taking out a guy that's been on our screens a lot and people are quite familiar with. He talks well, does Mr. Holland, so he's going to sell that fight. Sadly, COVID got in the way of that one, and on the 11th hour, Marvin Vettori, who was previously set to fight Jacare, steps in, and what an opportunity it was for that man. Damn, he's now fighting the number 4 guy. As much as I think that Jacare is a massive star, he was coming down from 205. He didn't have a number against his name. So where would that have put Vittori? I'm not sure, but there's a definitive number against Marvin Vittori's name now that he's taken a W against Jack Hermansson. So interestingly, now we have Marvin Vettori in his first ever main event. This is the second main event for Jack Hermansson. So I'm thinking, not knowing Vittori too well, this is a big step up. 5 rounds. We haven't seen him even prepare for 5 rounds in the UFC before. Jack Hermansson is a cardio machine, so it's all, in my eyes, it's all favouring Jack right now. And then, headlining on short notice, all of these things, I'm starting to think, I don't know, I don't think it's in his courts. I think Hermansson holds a lot of the cards here. But how wrong was I in those initial thoughts? Because Vittori was most certainly ready. So should we talk about the fight and my rudimentary analysis of what I saw? And we have an orthodox fighter against a southpaw, but Jack Hermansson typically likes to get the fight down to the ground and employ his crazy ground and pound, which he believes is the best in the UFC, and he's also got some ways of finishing the fight with the Joker and various other submissions, heel hooks apparently, as Kelvin Gastelum discovered. Oh, and that's a note as well, right? So if you're King's MMA and you're offered this opportunity to fight Jack Hermansson again within a calendar year, that is a useful thing to do. You would have looked at him closely. Kelvin Gastelum and Marvin Vettori, I'm sure, work very closely in the gym. Maybe even Vittori would have had to have posed as Jack Hermansson for Kelvin. I wonder if Kelvin did the same in return. They most certainly would have been comparing notes, however, which would have given him a really good fundamental understanding of what they were up against. Not necessarily the same for Jack Hermansson, who we saw, if you were looking at his social media, got the news about Kevin Holland and just said, yes, I'll take the fight against Vittori. So hats off to him. But it does make me think back to that times. Was it John Jones? I can't remember the year, but he turned down a late notice fight against Chael Sonnen. I believe it was Chael. Because of this style. He didn't have enough time to switch and pivot from whoever he was fighting before to then fighting Sonnen, and it started a bit of a trend. So 2020 isn't the year for those kind of trends, however, so people are taking their opportunities, and now I wonder if Jack Hermansson will look back on that and look at it on a business kind of deal and see whether or not would he have reevaluated it any differently. Let's talk about the fight. So we got this tricky southpaw orthodox fighter who likes to take down and then can typically get the fight done when it's on the canvas. But Marvin Vettori had different plans, and it started very well for Vittori, and he's got a really, really nice straight left. That rear hand, the power hand, the way he employs that is fantastic. And you had Jack Hermansson at times employing that sort of peekaboo style, but such are the size of the gloves and the precision of Vittori that it just wasn't working for him. It was going straight through that. Another thing that I noted was we saw Hermansson was using the jab, and I just don't know how effective the jab is unless you're an elite striker when you've got opposite stances like that. You'll often hear the commentators talk about the power hand being a really good weapon for both because it just the way that it breaks through the defences. It's something you've got that battle of the lead foot and all of those things, and Vittori clearly had a better notion of how to fight an orthodox fighter perhaps than what Jack Hermansson did, which again was interesting because Hermansson had a very specialised camp for Darren Till, a big power hitting elite southpaw striker. So I thought that Hermansson was going to be able to deal with that southpaw a little bit better than what he did, but I don't think that's a slight on Jack. I think that's just, we should celebrate Marvin Vettori. He has a fantastic fadeaway, like a pullback to then counter brilliantly. And I remember speaking to McGregor, who's one of the most famous southpaw fighters that we have in mixed martial arts. And he would tell you about the orthodox power hand. And he's had so many people try and just put that right hand on him over the years that he just gets out the way of it and counters so clinically. It's just programmed because he's been facing that the whole time. You don't get that the other way around. Orthodox fighters aren't used to fighting southpaws as much. It'd be very rare. Most people are right-handed. And so it's just not a look that you're used to seeing, even in the year 2020, when we've obviously had many, many, many different looks and evolutions through both boxing and mixed martial arts. So a little bit of an advantage there for Vittori. And I thought that he could have had that fight won in that first round. It just goes to show how tough Jack was. Perhaps strategically, he should have maybe gone for a bit more ground and pound or got Jack to stand up even. Maybe not that, but trying to go for the submission on a guy like Jack Hermansson, it was always going to be a tall order. Nevertheless, a knockdown showing his power, a guy that's had a lot of decisions in the UFC, but he's shown he's got powerful hands now, so whether that's something that's increasing as he goes through his career, who knows, but we're certainly watching it now. Then that second round, so Jack for me looked a little bit more, not desperate, but he was forcing the fight a little bit, and that was allowing the counter-striking more from Marvin Vettori. So the fight now is going in his way. He's the guy that's stepping up for his first main event, but all of a sudden he's got the number 4 guy chasing him a little bit because there's arguably a 10-8 round that we've just witnessed in that first. So Hermansson now tries to go for the takedown. And if you remember, I think John Anik said, but I think it's like the third best takedown defense in middleweight, active middleweights or in middleweight history, something to that effect. So it was always going to be tricky taking down Marvin Vettori, and Jack Hermansson found out about that. So wonderful stuffing of the takedown and just great balance, and he was able to kind of tire Jack out by doing that, which was very interesting. One thing that we saw change in Hermansson's game was he started coming away from that jab a little bit more and throwing his power hand, which he was having more success with. But as we went through the fight, you'll hear Paul Felder talk about the direction of that right hand, and it wasn't as straight as we saw what was coming back from Vittori. Now, if you're not going in a straight line and you're starting to arc and you're doing that at the same time, the guy with the straight line gets there first. Vittori was landing more. Let's talk about the volume, shall we? So apparently after the fight was all said and done, it was the most significant strikes in middleweight history. I think I had a look at the stats. It was like 286 significant strikes combined were landed from 680 thrown. That's crazy, and think back to some of the wars, the epic confrontations that we've witnessed at 185 pounds. That is some going. So, congratulations to both fighters for putting on an incredible show. Massive respect and thank you for entertaining us the way that you did. And Marvin Vettori, like a guy who's kind of bellicose, talks a good fight, aggressive in his mannerisms, and we saw what it meant to him, the passion, when he won that decision. 49-46, I think was the right call, and tears were flowing from his eyes. Just meant so much, and he's taken his opportunity now, and he also took the opportunity on the microphone, and he called out Paulo Costa. Great call out. I like it. It was an aggressive way to do it. One thing before I get on to the forward thinking from a divisional standpoint, I loved the way that Marvin Vettori turned around and said how much better he's going to get on the back of that victory. And I think that was because he knows he had to really dig deep. He knows he had to draw on all of his experience, fight experience, both in the gym, but also live combat in the cage. So that's exciting. And he said that in a certain way that it wasn't paying lip service to anything. He was genuinely excited about this new version that we're going to see in the future. And in the future, it could well be Paulo Costa. I mean, I really liked that fight. He was the last person to challenge for middleweight honours, and we saw what a job that Adesanya did on him. Oh, by the way, guess who the last person that Marvin Vettori lost to? Yes, the champ, by split decision. He did not get run over by any stretch of the imagination. And maybe we should have looked into that a little bit more coming into this fight with Jack Hermansson. Maybe some of you guys did, but I don't think that I did, if I'm being quite honest with you. So now, where do we go from here? It's a crazy top of the division, right? And really interesting as well. First and foremost, Marvin Vettori has just put Italian MMA back on the map. He is going to open the door for many more fighters. Alessio Sakara was the last guy that really did reach dizzy heights, but I think the best that he ever got to was, he challenged for the Bellator belt, but he got to a co-main, I think, against Brian Stan, so a long time ago, in the UFC. We now had someone from Italy who has had a main event in the UFC, in the US of A as well. And there's particular honours from that, particularly as a guy coming from Europe. There's always some prestige about fighting in the US. That's typically where all the big fights get done. Maybe not in 2020, but certainly historically. So well done to him for that. And now he has an opportunity of kicking on and getting closer to challenging for a belt and maybe even becoming the champion. And he'll be the first from Italy to do so. So massive for Italy, big for Europe again, and just the overall spread and development of mixed martial arts in general. Right, so that's out the way. What have we got? Who have we got? Paulo Costa, number 2. Robert Whittaker, number 1. The champion Israel Adesanya. The landscape. Jared Cannonier is, I think, number 3? He's injured. Was it a broken arm? So he's not around for any time soon. Romero's gone. What's Whittaker doing? Till was injured, but he's in the gym. He just wasn't ready to fight with Jack Hermansson, so he'll be ready at the beginning of next year, I'm sure. Who does he fight? I like that Paulo Costa fight, but that's a really bad call-out if you're Robert Whittaker, because the Adesanya camp are saying that Whittaker's not even on their radar right now. They are going up to fight at 205 pounds against Jan Blachowicz, they hope. We're not sure what's being done there. I know that Jan's expecting a child any day now, actually. This December, I believe, his wife was expecting. So he's going to want to enjoy some time there. What does that mean? Maybe March, I think they're aiming for. So, okay, those timelines work. But I go back to Robert Whittaker. Who does he fight? Who's called him out? I think Derek Brunson's called him out, actually. But does he want to be taking on Brunson right now? I really don't know. So I'm not sure where this leaves us. I'm not sure where this leaves Darren Till. If Jack Hermansson had won, maybe Till gets that fight. But it's exciting. And I like all of the options that are on the table. But this is really a celebratory piece for Marvin Vettori for taking his opportunity, for stepping up on a main event, for showing the world and himself that he can compete in a painfully arduous fight against one of the trickiest guys to be paired up against, the guy who's got good striking, slightly unorthodox at times, but brutal ground and pound, and an elite submission game. He was able to shut down all of those threats and punch his way to victory. So hats off to you, Marvin Vettori. I'm very much looking forward to your next move. If you like this little opinion piece, let me know. Looking to do a few more of these. I have a new setup here in my office. The background's going to be changing, hopefully before the New Year's. It'll be a little bit warmer. But there's lots of changes going on here in the Fox's Dojo. I'm John Gooden. Thank you for watching. Catch you next time.